Hey folks, it's Mr. Lawback. Thanks for joining me. I hope you're doing well. In this video, we're going to go over political ideology and the political spectrum. Political ideology is a set of beliefs or attitudes that a person has regarding the role of government. Should there be more government involvement or less government involvement? Everybody has a political ideology. Not everybody belongs to a political party, but everybody has an ideology. One thing when talking about political ideology is the political spectrum, which you can see down here. And the political spectrum is that range or that continuum of where people fall. So liberals would be to the left, conservatives would be to the right, moderates would be in the middle. This is sometimes referred to as the political scale as well. So this is a drawing I put together about political ideology. So once again, the political spectrum, sometimes called the political scale. Oftentimes, you'll hear liberals being referred to as being to the left and conservatives being to the right. You'll remember that this happened during the French Revolution, where they put those that wanted revolution on the left side of this legislative meeting, and those that wanted to maintain status quo, they were on the right side of the meeting. And so then the left and the right stuck from the French Revolution. And moderates, of course, are in the middle, and we'll talk more about them in a moment. Just a couple of basic, typical trends of liberals and conservatives. Generally speaking, liberals believe in a bigger government to solve people's problems. Conservatives think government should be small. The smaller the government, the better. In the United States, more of the governing should take place at the state and the local level. Liberals think government should be big enough to solve a bunch of problems, be a big, elaborate institution. Conservatives feel like it should be smaller. Generally speaking, liberals are more in favor of taxes and tend to believe in a progressive tax, which means that the wealthier pay more money, and those that don't make as much money pay less. Conservatives overall believe that there should be less taxes collected, and they believe in a flat tax where people would pay the same. Generally speaking, liberals tend to think there should be more regulations, whether it's on the economy and other aspects or in business, there should be more regulations. Whereas in conservatives believe there should be less regulation and believe in capitalism and the free market will ultimately balance itself. Liberals tend to think that equality is the ultimate goal and the government should facilitate this, whereas in conservatives believe freedom and liberty are the most important things, and that if people are free, there will be more equality. Generally speaking, liberals are softer on crime and conservatives are tougher on crime. However, recently, both liberals and conservatives believe there is a need for criminal justice reform in the United States. Liberals tend to think there should be more social programs, things like welfare, unemployment, things that help those in need. Conservatives believe there should be less of these types of programs and that much of this should be handled by charities or families, not necessarily government. Now, when it comes to moral issues and many social issues, let's say something like same-sex marriage or abortion, liberals believe the government should be less involved and that they should allow people to make up on their own mind regarding moral issues, and that the government should make laws to protect people to make their own decisions regarding moral issues. Conservatives, on the other hand, believe that the government should try to uphold the more traditional moral beliefs. When it comes to military spending, liberals tend to think that there should be less military spending and that money could be spent on other government programs, whereas a conservative believes there should be more military spending and that a strong defense is a very important and maybe the most important function of our government. Some other things here on the side, authoritarian, where this would be on the further left than liberal, where the government is in complete control of everything. Classical liberalism, which we'll talk more about that in a moment. Libertarians, you might remember, they believe there should be a small government on both economic and social issues, and government should famously be, according to libertarians, so small that you can hardly even recognize it. In the middle, you have moderates, and moderates have some liberal beliefs, some conservative beliefs. They oftentimes feel like the liberals and conservatives are too extreme. Most Americans, the largest group is moderates, and we know that the political parties during elections really target those moderates because that's how you win elections, getting moderates to vote for you. Classical liberalism is something that began in the Enlightenment, which was in the 15 and 1600s, and John Locke is considered to be the father of classical liberalism. Now, many of the founding fathers of the United States were classical liberals like Thomas Jefferson and Benjamin Franklin, and in many of the early documents and writings of those individuals, this was quite evident. Classical liberalism should not be confused with modern day liberalism. Many Americans are classical liberals, even though they would consider themselves to be conservative. So, what is classical liberalism? It's an emphasis on individual liberty. So, the government should at least protect your rights to freedom of speech, freedom of religion, the right to assemble, many of the things that are in the First Amendment. So, the belief that individual liberty is very important and the government should protect it. All humans are fundamentally rational, meaning that people are able to think for themselves and can make decisions for themselves, freedom of thoughts and ideas. Everyone should have an equal opportunity, that the government should not infringe on people having opportunities to succeed or the right to pursue happiness, as mentioned in the Declaration of Independence. The origins of this classical liberalism can be traced back to a reaction against rigid medieval social structure, and also in the United States can be traced back to colonial rule of the British Empire, leading eventually, of course, to the American Revolution. Now, to finish up, here are some odds and ends about liberalism, conservatism, the political spectrum, and ideology. First, what is liberal or conservative is relative context. So if you're in a room full of conservatives and you are a liberal in the context of that room, you might not actually be a liberal. You might just be liberal among the conservatives. So oftentimes you will hear talk of a conservative Democrat or a moderate Democrat or a moderate Republican or a more liberal Republican. So just keep in mind, many times when we talk about liberal conservative, it is relative to its context. Liberalism and conservatism philosophies have evolved over time and will continue to change. So just because something is liberal or conservative now doesn't mean it will continue to be that way forever. As an example, back in the 90s, same-sex marriage was viewed as a very liberal issue. But as time has gone on, same-sex marriage has become more acceptable and it's not nearly as liberal as it used to be. So liberalism and conservatism philosophies do evolve over time. During different time periods in our nation's history, our government has swung to be more liberal or more conservative to deal with certain issues. So throughout U.S. history, there have been many liberal swings and conservative swings. So liberal swings, the New Deal certainly, the Civil Rights Movement would have been a liberal swing of the government. In the recent economic crisis, there have been examples of liberal policies to sort of solve economic problems when maybe capitalism and the free market has spun out of control. There have been conservative swings like post-September 11th. Reaganomics, the politics of Reaganomics, was certainly a conservative swing during the Roaring 20s, where laissez-faire capitalism and the government did not regulate the economy at all. The Trump tax cut certainly would fall into this category as a more conservative swing and policy.